Hello and welcome to First Contact, the world's first podcast where we openly discuss all things relating to humanity's preparation for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. I'm your host, Eesha Patel. If you are loving this content, please be sure to join us in the First Contact Facebook community and let us know what you think. Let's dive into another exciting episode of First Contact. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to First Contact. Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you the wonderful Eesha Thompson. Eesha and I, we've been connected through Facebook online for a little bit now, and she runs these amazing UFO tours in Hawaii, which she can tell you all about in a little bit. So I wanted to bring Eesha on today because Eesha is one of these amazing examples of people who has first had her own contact, and I do want her to share the story of how that happened with you guys today, and also then going into how she's been able to help other people make contact as well, because I think that's a really important piece to discuss on this podcast. You know, a lot of people out there, they have spontaneous experiences, and it's really just they're laying in bed one night, or they go out and something happens. But then, with some of the more recent episodes, we've been discussing this idea of, well, what if we initiated that? And that's exactly what Eesha's doing over in Hawaii. So welcome, Eesha. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our show.
I'm so excited to be here with you and to share this information.
I have to say one thing, Eesha, is I love your work because we are connected on the socials. I see a lot of your photographs that you put up and the footage, and I feel the energy behind it, and you're doing some really incredible work with helping people connect. So I'm really excited to hear your story of how did you first get into this? Tell us about your very first experience.
Okay, so I have actually been an experiencer my entire life. And so the first conscious memory, and I say conscious because I have had other experiences previous to this, but the first conscious memory of actually being on a craft was when I was 15 years old. Wow. And so my mother and I, we were part of a spiritual school of enlightenment in Yelm, Washington, and we were learning about higher dimensional reality and consciousness and creating your reality, things of that nature. This is back in the 1980s, the mid 80s. And so when I was taken onto this craft, it was quite a beautiful experience. So I don't know how I got into the craft, but all of a sudden I'm in the spacecraft and it's just me and my ET guide. When he picked me up, he looked very human. And I also felt like I knew him. He was so familiar, like he was a friend. So I didn't have any fear. And we start flying through space. And what I remember with the craft is looking out, the walls were completely transparent, where you could just fully see out into space, the darkness, the pinpoints of the starlight, the beautiful colors of the gas layers as we were passing through. And then we finally land where we were going. And when we got there, I asked him where we were. He said that we were inside of Io, one of Jupiter's moons. Mm-hmm. And then he started touring me around what looked like a hospital kind of facility, where I could see into different rooms where people were being examined, and there wasn't anything scary going on, but everyone looked really human. And so my next question to him was, is everyone here human? Are you human? And he said, those of you that we brought here are human. We are not human, we're humanoid, but we disguise ourselves so we don't scare you because our form is really extreme and we tend to scare you. And so then my next question was, okay, well, why are we here and why specifically am I here? And he said that those of us that had been chosen to be brought there were being tested to see if something happened to Earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something similar. Now, this was back in 1988, where we were still in the Cold War. We were on the verge of World War III. And so there was a real actual timeline where something bad could have happened to Earth. So then at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like. So I was always obsessed with animals as a kid, the weirder, the better. And that's ultimately why I actually got a PhD in zoology, evolutionary biology. And so I knew that if I asked him to show me the form, I thought I could handle whatever it looked like. And so when he showed me himself, he ended up being about 7 feet tall, pure white skin, big dark eyes, and very long red hair. So very extreme in terms of his coloration and size, but completely benevolent. And so then I was returned back home. At the time when I'm just laying in my bed, because this was a nighttime experience, laying in my bed, and I was thinking, okay, that is the weirdest dream I've ever had. And for a few months, that's what I thought it was, just a dream. Now, dreams, we don't typically remember details after the first 10 minutes of waking up, especially like that. But as a teenager, I didn't really know that. So I just thought it was a dream. But fast forward a few months after that experience, I was actually reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And in that book, he's sharing his experiences of being taken by gray aliens. And at the end of the book, he's interviewing different people that had been taken on the craft. All of them have the same kind of gray ET experience that he's having, except for one guy had a completely different story, where he was telling Whitley that he had been taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And Whitley makes a little side comment, I hope it isn't Io. And when I read that, my body had head to toe chills, tears started coming down my face. And so that was my body's way of telling me, okay, that was a real experience, not just a dream. And so I went and told my mother, knowing she would believe me, because we were, learning about that kind of stuff in our school. Well, the school that we were attending was fairly high profile and of interest to the US government because of the things we were learning. We were learning remote viewing, telepathy, enhancing all the clairs, things like that. So they had actually sent CIA and other high government officials to come to the school to spy on us. Some of them left their positions with the government and actually became real students of the school. And so there was one guy that my mom knew that had been formerly very high government, who knew about the different ET races that our government knows about and even works with. So she introduced me to him. I shared my story. And when I got to the part of describing them, he was like, I don't know that race. He said that there are so many out there that we do not know, but you had a real experience. And so at that point, I was 16, and having that validated at such an early age, I didn't have to go through my life thinking I'm crazy or, that it was just a dream. And so, most of my life, though, after that point, I had my spiritual life, but I was trying to fit in to society. I was trying to be normal, fit in. I had, these mainstream kind of careers, like being a scientist. I was a professor for a little while. Then I was in mortgage, interior design. But it was actually 5 years ago that I met my Arcturian family, and I was taking a psychic intuition class. And the teacher on the first side of class led us through a meditative journey to meet a spirit guide that would help us get extra information. Now, one of my modalities that I do is past life regression therapy. And as a regression therapist, I have interacted with different spirit guides, humans, animals, things like that. But this time was a completely different experience where I went to a different realm, and in front of me were the most beautiful blue-skinned beings, and they just exuded the most pure love I've ever felt. And their message to me was, you are one of us, we are one of you, we are family. When I didn't know who they were, because at this point in my life, even though I had seen a lot of UFOs and orbs and things of that nature, I hadn't gone down the ET race kind of rabbit hole. And so when I came out of that journey, when everyone's going around class sharing who their spirit guide is, and I'm talking about these blue-skinned beings, and there was a lady in class who actually did know some of the different ET races. And she was like, okay, well, that sounds like you're talking about either the blue avians or the Arcturians. So I had to go home and Google what those were. And as soon as I saw the images of the Arcturians, it's exactly what I had seen in this journey. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 5 years, and I've developed that connection even stronger. And now I actually can channel them. And it's bridged the gap to connecting with 12 additional different races and channeling them as well.
That is mind-blowing. I mean, the first thing I have to ask is, what school did you go to where they actually taught you this stuff?
So it's called the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And it's
a children's school, or is it like for anyone?
It's for anyone. And it's actually, we had different events. Some were just weekend events, some were maybe just a few hours, some were week-long events. But we were basically, the school was taught by a channel descended master called Ramtha, and he's a 35,000-year-old warrior from Lemuria. And so,
did you do this in addition to your regular schooling, or was it on top of?
So
was it the same, or like
it,
instead of?
no, so I went to public school. So in America, we had
You had a regular school, and then you went to this extra school. That I was thinking when you said that was your school, and I thought, geez, what kind of school in America lets you do that? So you had your normal studies going on, and then on top of that, your mum's enrolled you to this extra thing that you guys are doing, and they're teaching you how to do remote viewing and psychic abilities, intuition. That is incredible. That is incredible. And at such a young age, I can imagine, how solidifying that would have been for you. Because I mean, I am one of those people where I found out in my mid-20s, I thought I was going crazy, So, and even that's considered quite young, really, to come across a lot of that stuff, because a lot of people don't figure this stuff out till they're like 40, 50 years old. So yeah, wow, that's incredible. Okay, so you went to the school, you learned these abilities, you had this experience with these Arcturians, and now you know who they are because this person has told you, and you Google it and an exact match. Now let's just fill in some of the other gaps there, because then we jumped across to, and now suddenly you channeled 12 other races. So for people out there, one of the big questions that we like to address here is, how do we initiate contact, which is the first one. And then secondly, I think you'd be very well versed in this, the perfect person to ask is, how do you discern between them? Because, some people are still at that point where they go, okay, I've had a contact, and they can verify that it is a non-human intelligence of some form. But you've got it really dialed in as well. So, if it's Arcturian or any other race that you're speaking with. So tell us first, how can people connect? But secondly, how can they also figure out who it is that they're speaking to?
Good question. So that's actually another thing that we were learning at the Ramtha School is how to kind of communicate and invite in these experiences. And so we would do these really intense meditations where we were doing a type of communication where sometimes we would draw a symbol on an index card, and there might be 1,000 people in the audience. Everyone's got a different symbol, but we're concentrating on this symbol, holding it in our mind's eye, and the staff are taking pictures, and there are all of these entities and orbs filled in the stadium where we were, this big horse field, indoor, whatever, arena, that's what it's called. And they would take photos of these orbs, and inside of the orbs would be the exact symbols that were drawn on the index cards. So there was a kind of communication started there. And so that, I think, opened me up to like, okay, we can call them in. And, I know people like Dr. Stephen Greer have been teaching people how to do this, but shamans have been doing this since the beginning of time, right? It's not a new thing. CE5 is not new, but it's connecting, it's raising your vibration to a higher consciousness and asking like, hey, I want to connect. And then when we're asking for it, because that invitation is there and we have free will, they can lower their vibration enough to be able to interact with us and give us information and perhaps show themselves to us. So it's more of an inward journey with these higher dimensional beings, which I know you know about, as opposed to a physical reality where like all of a sudden an Arcturian's going to walk in my front door. They don't do that. There are, we do have ET races that are a little more physical than some of the other groups. But really, once you have developed that connection, it can be instantaneous. You don't have to go through a long meditative process. So it's really just making that first connection with a group and feeling their energy, and for me, again, what I teach people on my UFO tours and in my classes is, first and foremost, you need to learn how to raise your vibration. You do not want to be in a low negative state of mind, because whatever frequency you are resonating at is what you're going to attract into your life. And so the other thing that I really try to get through to people in the tours, my classes, my book, is we have to start working through the shadows of our minds, because we create our own worst scenarios. Nothing out there is scary, truly. And so when we are working through the shadows, we are understanding the diversity and the form and function. And this is where I love what I did as a biologist, understanding the form and function of animals and how, some crazy looking animal, how it's perfectly adapted to its environment. So when we start getting over the judgments of how things look, then we can truly open ourselves up to the wide variety of life that's out there, whether it's here on Earth or, out in the galactic cosmic world.
That's just incredible. You often refer to yourself as a galactic ambassador. What does that role mean for you?
So over the last 2.5 years, I've embraced this idea because for years, I just hid all of this information because, again, I'm trying to be normal, fit into society. But I moved to Hawaii about 3 years ago. And when I got here, I realized, okay, number one, there's so much activity here in Hawaii. It is a hotspot, which a lot of people aren't familiar with. But when I started doing the UFO tours, I was like, okay, I am kind of the bridge. I am bridging the information of who these entities are and bringing them, connecting them with people. And so that part is the ambassadorship. I'm here to basically introduce and allow people to understand who they are, like why they might be here visiting us, because there are so many different groups here visiting, and really to change the fear-based narrative of the government, media, and Hollywood to understanding the love, the unity, that we are all connected. And ultimately, we are shifting as a collective into this fifth dimensional reality.
I think you've touched upon something very important there, because there is a lot of negative narrative out there in the media. Most, if not all, of the ET movies in the last sort of 40 odd years portray the ETs as the enemy, really, as these negative beings who are malevolent. They want to harm us. And of course, you and I know that cannot be further from the truth. They're actually very loving. They want to support us. If they wanted to annihilate us, they well and truly would have by now. They're very capable of disabling our nuclear technologies. And they've shown on many, many occasions that if we go too far down the path of self-destruction, that they can shift things in the blink of an eye, So I think shifting that narrative is so important. I am curious, this is a personal question. So the word galactic ambassador, did you receive that from them, or is that something that you came up with?
That's a really good question. They didn't really tell me those words, what I got. And this actually became even more clear in Peru. Earlier this year, I was in Peru. And when I was standing inside of the tridimensional Stargate on the shore of Lake Titicaca, came very loudly, clairaudiently of, forget what other people are doing. You are here to be a bridge. You are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So don't worry about yourself trying to shift to the fifth dimension. You're here to be connecting people, being the light, sharing this information from us so that people will start understanding, so that when we do have major open contact here on Earth, because at some point we are going to have interaction regularly with them, not just those of us right now that do. And so, we need people on the ground that are kind of that bridge. Yeah.
I love that. The reason why I asked personally is because that is a phrase that's been told to me as well. And I've met one other person who has also received that similar, exact title actually of Galactic Ambassador. So I find it quite curious when I meet other people who use those same types of words, and I go, oh, I wonder where they got that from, because for me, it came directly from Star Family. I'll be honest with you, I don't even use the word. You won't see it anywhere on my website or anything like that, because it's not something I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. It's not really something I've embraced, but it's something I've been told, and I feel like ambassador is like a role for somebody who's up in government or something. And then I'm like, I'm not really there. So I just don't really use it. But so I was just curious to ask you where you got that from, especially because I've met one other person who says a very similar thing as well. And I'm sure there's others out there as well, you know, but just a small handful have crossed my path. So you mentioned that you connect with 12 different races. Could you
13.
list 13? Okay. Could you list it for us?
Yeah, so the Arcturians were my first group. And then last year, I actually had a really amazing regression session. So I regress people, but I love having my own regressions done to get, to understand my different parallel lives. And so one of the lives that I got to experience was that of a Syrian. And it was during the time of ancient Egypt, during the building of the pyramids. And that wasn't my role, though. I was one of the genetic engineers that was modifying the human body. And so it was done through the sound frequency coming out of our craft and beaming it down. And that was changing the human DNA to upgrade the body, to be able to hold more energy. But I also got to witness, seeing my counterparts teaching the humans how to do the sound thought levitation process to lift these megalithic stones and move them into place. And so being able to see that life, then I'm like, okay, so I'm not just Arcturian, I have Syrian lineage. And then I was like, you know what? I know I have other groups too, because I'm way more not of this earth than I am of this earth. So I started like really tapping in to see, okay, who else am I connected to? So the Zetas, I am part of the hybrid program. So I actually have been, and like as a volunteer, like, yes, sign me up for that. So the Zetas, the hybrids, the Orions, I think a lot of us have Orion kind of experiences just because of that whole polarity thing. The Andromedans, specifically from constellation Andromeda instead of the galaxy. The Blue Avians are a group that came in, a group of very high vibrational reptilians, because, we have different reptilian races out there.
They get a real bad rap. I'm very aware that there are some lower vibrational ones, and then there are a very small subset of high vibing ones.
Yes. And that was why I wanted to actually bring in a group that is a little more controversial, because, there really are some amazing, loving ones out there. Okay. So then who else? I don't even know how many I mentioned so far.
We've done Arcturian, Andromedan, Zeta, the high vibing reptilians, Orion. I'm guessing you're probably connected with Pleiadians. I mean, that's one that.
Oh my gosh.
Pleiadian, Syrian, they're like the very common ones. The Lyrians, have you met the Lyrians? Yeah. Lyrians, Melchizedek.
Oh, the Vegans.
Oh, the Vegans, yeah. And the Venusians?
I actually haven't done them yet.
Okay. Oh, they're a beautiful race. Yeah.
I know who they are, but I haven't interacted yet.
Yeah, they're actually coming through at this time of recording this podcast. They're coming through really strongly right now. Just for reference, we're in the month of, it's the 18th of August, 2023 when we're recording this. So at this very particular moment in time, they're coming through quite strongly. In my experience. Who else do we have? I'm trying to think. I think we've named about 9 or 10 of them so far.
I mean, I should probably have a list.
That's not when I said, can you list them all? I thought, will you be able to remember all of them off the top of your head?
I guess this year, so I'm finishing currently, and maybe by the time this is out, my newest book will be out, but I have a new book, Wisdom of the Galactics, and it's actually all of the 13 groups. It's channeled messages from them, and like they are. And then I also created an oracle deck with those 13 races as well, with their channeled messages. And so
you've also connected with Inner Earth Agathans as well, right?
Another group. Yes, it's really interesting because I didn't understand why I was called to Hawaii. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but it wasn't like I grew up, oh my gosh, I always want to live in Hawaii. But the middle of COVID, middle of 2020, we decided to uproot our lives from Washington State and move to the big island of Hawaii. Now, when I got here, then it became really obvious why I'm here. Number one, the veil's thinner here, so there's just so much activity. So it was really to have that connection. But it also, there is a connection, a big island to Mount Shasta with the inner earth beings, with the Agarthans. There's actually a direct tunnel that goes from my island to Mount Shasta. And I know that in the astral realms, I am working with them very closely.
Yeah, there's such beautiful groups of beings. And Mount Shasta, I mean, I've visited Hawaii and Mount Shasta. That was my very first mission back in 2015. And like so many synchronicities happened. It was just wild. I mean, the short version of the story is I got guided to go to Mount Shasta on September 11th, 2015. And it was very specific, like you have to be on the mountain on this specific date, you know? I thought, okay, that's interesting. I just followed it, literally got on a plane from Australia to California, you know, booked this flight, like just on a whim sort of thing, got there. And then as soon as I get to the mountain, I mean, during the day, I was just like wandering around like, oh, you know, I don't really know what's happening. And I'm just sort of, you know, waiting for the guidance. And eventually I get this like, go now, you know? So I get in my car and I'm like, yay, I'm going up the mountain. Yeah, it's like probably about 3 o'clock by this point. Get up there and I meet a lovely, wonderful gentleman there. And within the first minute of us talking, he happens to know, and you mentioned regression work, right? So he's a quantum hypnosis therapist at Dolores Cannon's work. And I had met one other lady. She's from America. She was in Perth many years before that. And I happened to actually meet her and have a session with her of this quantum hypnosis technique. And anyway, I meet this guy up the mountain. He happens to know the only other person I know in America, you know? And I was like, what are the odds of that? Like, what are the odds of that, you know? But it gets even cooler. So the following day, there was a UFO conference happening up in Sandflat, like the very next day. And I thought, okay, so I go up the mountain, I meet this guy, he tells me that there's this thing happening. Guess who's going up the next day to meet all these people? So I get back in my car, I'm like, I'm coming, I want in on this, you know? So I just went to this thing and just crazy how it all happened. But yeah, the energy there is just, I mean, you would know all about it, Lisa. It's just phenomenal. Like so many connections to inner earth, Agartha. Have you ever visited Pluto's caves or anything like that?
Not that I consciously am aware of.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There's so many experiences that are still just kind of being unpacked and being revealed.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time at nighttime having those dreaming type experiences where you're traveling and visiting, you know? I like a lot of people have said that they when they go to sleep, they visit the mystery schools in inner Agartha, or they visit various temples on different planets. Have you had that experience?
I have, although one of the things that came out of the information with my work with the Agarthans is that I don't get to fully remember the experiences because I wouldn't want to come back.
That's very relatable. I can understand that. Yeah, that's something I've heard from other people as well, where they're just saying that, you know, if we got told everything about everything right away, we almost wouldn't want to do our mission here, you know? And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can relate to that deep longing to want to go home. Like when you said earlier that, you know, you feel like you're more from those places or those races than you are for Earth. And I'm like, oh, you and me both, sister. I'm so galactic, you know. I just feel like Earth is a very strange place to be sometimes, and almost incomprehensible. Because when you know, I mean, I'm going to take a guess and say you're probably energetically sensitive, like the rest of us who connect, right? So you can feel frequencies, you can feel energies when you're walking into crowded places, you feel emotions. And those frequencies, they're not natural to those of us that are a little bit more galactic. There's something that we have to learn. It's almost like we have to learn to be human, to adapt, but it's not really our natural state of being, right?
No, it's not. And my experience as a child was I actually had a lot of illness because I think my body was trying to adjust to the energy. And I was just sick all the time. And I had some weird things going on. And even through my 20s, I had weird stuff just going on health-wise. And so now I have come to more of an integration of being the energy in the body. But it was really interesting when I started channeling, because then now this physical vessel then has to run all this energy through that's way higher than, this earth vibration. And so it would wear my body out at first. And so it's been working up to be able to do it longer or have different energies come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yes, it's just such an interesting journey. And for those of us that are doing that bridging kind of role, it's a very unique kind of experience because so much of our essence is galactic and we're bringing through all these different frequencies, and yet the body sometimes, it does need occasionally that time to integrate or to really process. Lisa, one of the things I love about your work is you take groups of people out on these tours, these big island tours that you run. And you've had some amazing experiences. I see some of the photographs that you post, and I would love if you could share just one or two of your, I guess, most prominent or standout type of experiences that you've had when you've been running these tours with people.
Okay, yeah, I would love to share. So it's like a normal tourist kind of tour where, we're on TripAdvisor and all the big places you can sign up for a tour. But I have two options for the tour. I've got the intro tour for the basic people, but then I have an extended spiritual tour where that's where I do a meditative journey to help people connect to their galactic family and guides and learn how to raise that vibration and call them. And so it's been interesting because on nights where we do that, and even depends on who comes on tour. If they are super open and they are so excited and in a state of joy, the kind of activity that we see is much more intense and incredible, amazing than for the people who are like, whatever, it's just a satellite. And I'm like, it's not a satellite. So one example, on the 2/22/22 portal night, there were a group. Normally our tours are really small. We only have up to 10 people, but this night, because it was the portal day, I decided to do a bigger group. There were 30 of us, and I was leading everyone through the meditative journey. And we were actually doing it at a different location. We were down south of where I was at my friend Brittany's house, and she has a covered outdoor pavilion. So in the middle of the meditation, it's raining cats and dogs. It's just raining so hard. And I'm like, okay, we're probably not going to get the goggles out. We're not going to see anything. Well, so after the meditation stopped, after that was finished, the rain stopped, but it was still full clouds in the sky. So again, I'm thinking, okay, we're not going to see anything. However, my husband and we were walking up to where our car was, and we were both looking in the same direction, and through the clouds, it was like a moonless night, through the clouds was the sharpest pyramid shape, giant in the sky coming through the clouds. And Brittany, my friend who was down with the other people, she saw it too. So there were three of us that just saw this massive laser sharp pyramid through the clouds. And so it's pretty incredible, because even though I was thinking, we need the goggles, no, we don't always need the goggles. And when I'm talking about the goggles, for those of you who are like, what goggles? We use advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles. And what that does is it really amplifies the amount of light you can see in the night sky. So that if on a normal starry night, you might see, a few hundred stars, you see thousands of stars. You see every satellite, everything that is moving in the sky. And so that's one example. Now, on a different night, this was actually not on one of our tours. This was March 7th, 2023, so March of this year. I was speaking about my book at a local bookstore that was about an hour away from my house, and it was nighttime. On the way home, the whole way home, we have a very dark island because we have very little population here. And so I'm always looking and asking, like, hey, I want to see you guys, show up for me, please come. And so on this particular night, I arrive home to my neighborhood, and about a block from my house, I see this really bright light above the trees. And so I acknowledge, I'm like, hey, I see you, but I'm going to go home and park. So I park my car, go down to the end of the driveway, look across the street, and it's still there above the tree line. So what it looked like was a big pulsating star. Now, I'm a scientist, so I have constellation app, I got satellite apps on my phones because I'm going to make sure I'm going to rule out anything, right, that's known. And so I get the constellation app out, and there was no star or planet there. Sometimes Venus is giant here, and it looks like a spacecraft. So anyway, so it wasn't that. So then I acknowledged it. It was like, okay, I know you're a craft. And so it's just pulsating. And I'm like, please do something for me that only a spacecraft can do, that a star can't do. And again, full clear night. So what it did was it completely dimmed out. And a few seconds later, it came back on full brightness. And I was like, I got excited. I'm like, do it again, do it again. So it did it again. And then it came back on full brightness. And I kept asking it, do it again, because I wanted the validation. So it did it 4 or 5 times for me. And I thanked it. You know, I always am very grateful when they show up and I acknowledge. And so then I realized, oh, I've got my phone. Let me try to take some pictures and video of it. Well, at the time, I've upgraded my phone since then, but I had an iPhone XR, so kind of an older one. So I'm trying to take pictures. It's not looking anything like what I was seeing in the sky with my eyes. So I didn't know if I was getting anything good. I'm trying to call my husband. He got home before I did. He's not answering his phone, and I was not going to leave this to go get him. So I'm just, taking the photos. At some point, then I was like, okay, I got to go in. I have to use the bathroom. And so I go in the house, looking through the photos, and that's when I saw, okay, when I zoomed in, I'm like, this has actual structure to it. And then when I looked at the video and zoomed in, I could see that it was not only pulsing, but it also had spinning mechanism in it. Now, what's super interesting about that, so this was again, March 7th, 8 p.m. when I'm taking this. The next morning, 5:30 in the morning, people started taking pictures of extremely strange clouds here on our island. So the spaceship clouds. Most people, they're lenticular clouds. However, they're shaped just like spaceships, right? And these clouds stayed on our island in place. There were several of them, 5:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. on March 8th. So all day long, these clouds are there. Where we have other clouds, passing by, changing shape, but these clouds were holding their form. And so what I understood later was this craft that I got and these spaceship clouds, those were actually Pleiadian craft. And so, that was pretty incredible to have that confirmation. And then when I was in Peru, though, the spherical one, so this was a daytime thing. We were doing an ancient alien, modern alien tour of Peru with a group of spiritual people. And every single day through the night, I'm asking, hey guys, I want to see you, come. And what they were doing, rather than appearing physically, is they would show up in the photos. And so I took this one photo that I know you've seen where it's like this phased in sphere. And then, it's very obvious in the clear blue sky. And then just a few days ago, I was inspired by one of my UFO guests because she had taken a picture of a UFO that we captured through the goggles and enhanced it. And I was like, what if I enhance this spherical picture? It's not Photoshop, but I'm just enhancing it on the iPhone, playing with the brightness, the contrast. And you can fully see the energy coming off of this thing, the perfect sphere. It's really incredible. And so there are so many different examples. And a local family, they come out regularly. They have a mantis snorkel tour and we trade with them all the time, and they're highly connected. And so one night there was a white squiggle that just showed up in the sky. And we're like, what is that? So we're watching it and it turns into an amoeba shape, and then it turns into a bell shape, and then it starts coming closer to us. And then it just sat there for a while and then dissipated. So wow. All types of activity.
That's incredible. And you mentioned that you have a beginner's tour. Do you get skeptics coming along from time to time who are like, oh, I'm just going to do this because like maybe they're traveling in Hawaii and they find you on TripAdvisor and they decide to come check it out. Do you get any sort of, odd interactions like that?
We don't get single skeptics. What we do is we get the husband-wife team or the married couple.
So one of them wants to do it and the other one is like, what is this? I'm being dragged along for the ride.
That happened the other night where we actually had two families out and both wives were the believers and they were yes, we're so excited. During my presentation, until we got the goggles out, both of them are cross-armed, like, no. But then we got the goggles out and we were seeing stuff. And so they loosened up a little.
I wanted to say, well, they're not beer goggles, right? These are proper quality goggles. So yeah, compute it, right?
Goggle set is $4,000 US. So
oh my God, wow.
So they're very high quality, and part of the tour is I train people the moving objects, like what is the predictable behavior of airplanes, of helicopters, satellites, whether it's a space station or all the Starlinks or just a normal satellite, because you have to know the known behavior of those kinds of things, and they are very predictable. And so then when you see something that starts looking like a satellite, but then it does something the satellite can't do, like change direction or slow down or disappear in the middle of the sky where it should still be on its trajectory. We see some really incredible activity from these things.
That's so amazing. So one of the things I really like to ask a lot of the people that we have on this show is, do you think there's going to be open contact anytime soon?
So what my Arcturians are always sharing with me is all timelines exist simultaneously. And yep. So what timeline do you want to be on? So I'm in the timeline slice where, yes, we are going to have open contact, and we, possibly 10 to 30 years. It depends on how quickly I think we get our act together as a global citizenship instead of being so polarized. Mm-hmm. Because we can't embrace others if we can't even embrace ourselves, right?
Yeah, such a big part of that evolution and consciousness. And at the same time, I always say we don't need to wait for an official disclosure. So if people want to go out and have their own first contact, how would they go about and do that? Well, obviously they can come to your tour, right? As one of the ways.
I also, on my website, I have a free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides. And so really anyone can do this. And I really want that to be made clear. Anyone can connect. It's just a matter of going within, really learning how to raise that vibration and ask and you shall receive. And, sometimes they can come to you in a more physical form. Sometimes it is going to be more in your dream state, or they might be able to phase in really shortly and then phase back out. It depends on how they're able to show themselves, but they will, especially if you, I know the more that I was asking and consciously asking over the last 2 years that I've been doing this tour, they're always there. They're always like, okay, hi. Yeah, we'll pop in and say hi.
That's really beautiful. And yes, I think that's a really great message to finish up on, that anyone can do this. You don't have to be some chosen one, everyone can do this. They're out there. You just drop into your heart, use the tools, the resources, meditations, tours. There's a lot out there to support, this journey. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's I love connecting with you in general, but it's always nice to hear people's stories. And I didn't actually know your whole backstory, so a lot of the reactions you got from me were very authentic, and I like to do that on purpose. When I do these podcasts, I don't get people's full backstory ahead of time, because I get to then have that more honest kind of response. And I didn't know all about this stuff about the school, and I was just kind of really blown away by that. So those were all very, genuine responses from me. I really just appreciate you being here to share that journey, because I've learned a lot, even just in this call that we've had today, about the different races and the different I guess pathways as well, because you mentioned quite a few different things that you did, the remote viewing, and we didn't go too far into some of that. We may need to get you back on for a part 2 at some point, because I want to dive deeper into it. But really appreciate you being here with us today and sharing your story. It's just so valuable and important at this time that people learn what you have to say about all of this.
Thank you so much for providing a platform, because you are an ambassador as well. And so ambassadors out there as we can get.
True, we do. Yes, I love it. Thank you for joining us, Lisa. It's an absolute pleasure. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to First Contact. I'm your host, Eesha Patel, and I'm so excited to have this conversation about open contact with extraterrestrial beings. Come join me in the Facebook community where you can continue the discussion, or keep listening for another episode of First Contact.